Hello there, I'm Vojta, and today I would like to talk with you about whether you should watch tutorial or shouldn't. So this one is going to be a bit controversial, so before you start listening, I would like to give you a little bit of a context. So why the hell should you even listen to me? What kind of authority do I have on that? And I don't have any authority, just to clear that out of the way. But I do have some history with both teaching and learning, obviously, and making tutorials. So I have made a lot of tutorials. I think over 100 videos of just tutorials, probably more than that. And some of them fairly successful. There is quite a few videos that have more than 100,000 views. I think more than that even, which is quite a lot for very niche topics. It's rare to find tutorials with that many views. I'm not saying necessarily to brag, even though I do brag a little bit, but to clarify that when I'm saying that, I'm not saying it from someone who has never made tutorials. I actually have done a lot of tutorials and done a lot of them fairly successfully. But I still think you probably shouldn't watch tutorials. So first thing I would like us to think about is why are you watching tutorials? Tutorial is rarely a goal, right? You're not quite watching a tutorial for the sake of watching a tutorial. Usually when someone watches a tutorial, it's because they want to learn something. There is something that they would like to learn, they would like to explore, and they watch tutorial, and tutorial is sort of a means towards that end. And that's kind of where that problem is. Because for a lot of the people, what I have observed and seen is that it kind of transfers from I use this tutorial to learn this subject to I am watching tutorials. And that's the thing they are doing. They're watching tutorials. They are not learning by watching tutorials. They're just watching tutorials. And I do think there is actually a point. There is a point that you reach fairly quickly at which watching tutorials are mostly to a detriment to your learning rather than to actually help you. So the question is, when does it make sense to watch tutorials, and when is it actually a waste of time for you? To bring it a bit closer to you, I would like to think about this as sort of a timeline. Imagine that you are some person, some learner that wishes to learn a specific subject. So that's your goal. Your goal is to learn subject. I'm going to talk about learning Unreal, learning Unity, any sort of Unity. But let's say that you are learning some engine that actually makes sense to learn. But let's say that you are learning some technology, some engine, and your goal then is to learn the engine, which by itself is actually a really, really stupid goal. So let's maybe do a step back and start there. So first thing, before you decide to do anything, is you're gonna decide what's your goal. As a learner, the first thing you always have to do is to figure out what the hell are you doing there. Because imagine someone would just sit down and decide that he is gonna learn math. Like everything there is to know about math. Like that's the few lifetimes of learning. The same with pretty much any field, and that's certainly the case with game development, and mostly the case with engines and technology as well. You can decide to do that. I suppose you could be a scholar of specific engine, specific technology if you want, but that's very likely not the case for most people who watch tutorials. So let's assume that you are not a scholar and your goal isn't to learn an engine, it's to make games. It's probably to make some very specific games. So in that case, we are right away quite a bit closer to what you are actually trying to achieve. So your goal is to, let's say, learn how to make a FPS shooter game. Then now it's brought us much closer to what actually makes sense to focus on. So we have stated ourselves some goal, and that goal is to make a short, small FPS game. Now, you have set yourself a goal, so you as a learner will probably think about how to structure your sort of a journey from start when you decided to learn and specified your goal to actually the point where you have learned and you can make a game again, and you have made this sort of a game. The first thing, again, structure your goal, figure out your goal, and probably scale it down. And I understand you're probably thinking about some super huge goal, like learn Unreal, learn how to make games. Kind of useless. Just set up very specific, achievable goal, and then do that. And think about a goal that you can accomplish in months, not years. At least on the start. The main reason why you are doing that, just gonna have to make the whole video about setting goals, but like just very quickly. The main reason why you are doing that is because here on the start, when you are deciding what your goal is, you actually don't know how to achieve it yet. There's a lot of ways there's a lot of obstacles and a lot of ways that you have to learn before you can even understand why that is the goal that you need to achieve and what it actually takes to achieve that. So that's why you want to start with a very simple goal, because achieving that simple goal will teach you a lot more about what it takes to achieve the difficult goals. So you will be much more qualified and much more experienced in actually setting yourself a proper goal. We went a bit of a sideways there, so let's do a step back and think about why are you watching tutorials? Because that's kind of nicely, let's us tie it together. So your goal is to make a FPS game. And you think that to create that FPS game, you need to watch a tutorial series that tells you how to make an FPS game. Speaking as someone who made videos like that. And the problem is that we humans actually don't learn as much by observing, by following exactly to the point, by watching tutorials. We could go pretty deep into neuroscience and why it makes sense, how the synapses in the brain get formed, and how you have to have a bunch of associations there. But as a very, very brief and quick look into it, you learn and remember more by the new synapses and memories created in your brain get connected to other synapses created in your brain. And if you are just following it from point to point, you actually don't quite build it yourself. Those synapses are more likely and more of them gets created if you have to figure these things by yourself. So with that said, I am not necessarily saying you should just not ever watch tutorials again and rather and just do everything by yourself. That's a waste of time. It's gonna take you too long. So what you want to do is to figure out how to use tutorials to actually help you achieve that goal. But you should never lose a focus on that point, on that goal that you are trying to achieve, because that's the important thing. So now we have kind of established where it makes sense to watch tutorials, where it doesn't make sense to watch tutorials, and we can probably agree, if you agree with the thesis that I have laid here, is that most of the times you actually don't want to watch tutorials because it's not helpful to you. So then the question is, when does it make sense to watch tutorials? And the previous thesis actually kind of answers that. And that's where it's too difficult for you to figure it out by yourself. You could still do it if you put there enough time, but you probably don't want to do that. And it's not productive for you to do that. Productive in this case simply means what's the optimal way how to achieve this specific sub-goal of your total goal. Let's clarify the productive in this case, in this context. For example, let's say you have never ever opened Unreal. Let's say you are at this part of a journey, you have never ever worked with any sort of an engine, any game development. At that point, just jumping in and getting very confused, scared, and running away is probably not the best thing to do. So it would make a lot of sense to watch a introduction tutorial, maybe a tutorial that lets you go through the whole project, or maybe just a read the basic documentation page. So it would make a lot of sense for you to just watch a tutorial that will take you through the basics, that will get you a little bit more familiar with UI. It will get you a little bit more closer to what you actually want to do. That means, let's say, walk around the engine, program the very basic part of movement or whatnot. Something very simple that will show you a little bit how it works. But then, after you have this basic knowledge, then you don't want to just follow the next tutorial. What you want to do is to try to continue by yourself and fail, because you will fail. But that's fine. The point of learning is that if you fail, you figure out what went wrong, and then you continue. And the next time you fail, you figure out what goes wrong, etc., etc. So it feels, if you zoom in, it feels like you are constantly failing like this. But what's actually happening is that it's sort of a sinusoid, upwards trending linear. Well, it's not very linear, but it's upwards training journey when you're learning. And you are constantly failing during that. But that's important, because whenever you are learning and you fail during that learning, then you have created a bunch of connection and synapses and associations in your brain that you can connect your correct solution to, trying to program some projectiles, tracing, some nonsense like that. Right? And then you try to do it and you fail today, you try it 2-3 times and you're like, okay, this is horrible. Then you go and you watch a tutorial, or you will read the documentation page, or look at forum, anything like that. And you found a way how to do that, and you're like, oh my god, this makes so much sense. And because you have tried it so many times before, you can actually remember this new implementation, because you have so many more connections with it already set up that you have tried by yourself. So now, instead of having this one point in your brain that's supposed to connect to rest of your Unreal Engine learning, you have like 5 of them that get connected together, and each of them gets also connected to different Path Engine, and you are creating this huge network of interconnected memories and interconnected knowledge. All right. So let's put on a summary what your optimal learning process will look like. I'm gonna take it all the way from the start. That's a person who has never ever worked with Unreal. Again, gonna use Unreal as an example. to a person who can be anywhere on this journey, and you just connect yourself at what point it makes sense, and then just continue from on there. So our learner, let's use a learner, you, on the start, is not very technically savvy, has never worked with game development on an engine like that. Okay, so if you jumped into engine not right away, you're probably not going to be able to do much. What you're going to do is to start by watching some beginner tutorial. Just simple, one tutorial gets you familiar with UI. Great. You do that, then you continue on to a next point, and at that point you have decided that you are trying to make a simple FPS game. So now we are familiar with UI, so you're going to try to make a simple FPS controller, something you can move around, maybe you can even shoot. You're going to try that a few times, you're going to fail miserably, and you're going to go back and watch some tutorial how to set it up. You're going to read documentation. Rule of thumb, always read documentation first, try to make sense of that, and then watch tutorial. Documentation in most cases is much faster and much better for your learning. Then you do that, you overcome the obstacle, you have learned a lot, you have tried all the ways how it doesn't work, and you know of one of the ways how it works, and then you do that again. Okay, now you have this set up, so you need some targets that you shoot. Maybe you actually can do that now because you have learned a lot from the previous steps. So now you do that, and you actually manage to go again. And the longer you learn, the more of these steps you can manage to do for the first try without needing to go to tutorials. But now let's say like you are gonna jump into a bit more difficult task. You are trying to make a AI that's gonna attack you and shoot at you and it can die and all that. So you try that, you fail miserably, you try to use behavior trees, then you are horrible human being for thinking about using behavior trees, then you go back into documentation, you're gonna learn a little bit about state trees, and you're gonna be like, oh, that's so cool, I can use these. Then you'll use them, you're gonna fail few times before that, try it during testing the state trees, then you are gonna do them again, and eventually overcoming this huge hurdle, and you're gonna continue again, and again, and then you are somewhere in the sky with a god, and you are all making games together. So yeah, that's kind of how you learn without watching much tutorials. So I'm gonna now answer the question from the beginning, whether you should watch tutorials or not, and the answer is very much, it depends. Rule of thumb, most of the cases, no. And if you do watch them, you have to be very, very careful and very aware of why you are watching them. Are you watching them just because you want to feel productive and watch tutorials, or because they are actually helping you learn something that will bring you closer to your goal that you are trying to learn? Hope this was helpful and not too chaotic. We're gonna see. We can say, if it wasn't chaotic, you can thank the editor. If it was chaotic, you can curse me. It's pretty much a rule of thumb. So that's about it. Thank you for watching, guys. Subscribe and like if you did, because I'm gonna release a lot more of these videos. And sharing would always help. That's the main way how this channel can grow. So if you can share it, that would be very helpful. Right. Thank you kindly. Fansi out. Well, Vojta out, I guess. Anyway. Okay, come here, please. Stay here and look pretty. Okay. Can you just sit down and look pretty? Come, please. Yeah, good boy. He's well trained when he's in the mood. I don't think he's gonna sit there and be pretty.